Welcome to Impact and Influence, the podcast for current and emerging leaders to build on leadership capability, sustainability, and purpose. This series opens the door to what's possible to build a life in leadership by design, not by default. Brought to you by Regrowth Consultancy, powered by Flick It Over. Flick It Over is a leading electronic software platform. Flick It Over provides industry-specific solutions to improve process, client experience, and efficiencies. Make your document delivery and workflow seamless with Flick It Over. Welcome to another episode of Impact and Influence. Thrilled today to have two superstars from Melbourne joining us, no strangers to the property arena and celebrated across our industry, Ruth Roberts and Benjamin Dax. Hi guys, how are you?
Good, Kylie. Thank you.
Very, very well. Thank you.
Both coming to us from a beautiful little pocket of the world down around Carnegie, but we'll hear about your offices shortly. I want to start by introducing Ruth first, Benjamin, if that's okay.
Far away.
Ruth is like an absolute rock star. I had the privilege of meeting Ruth just before Christmas last year. One of the most celebrated female sales agents in the country. Also a female auctioneer, which is really cool. I didn't know that, Ruth, until I met you before Christmas.
Well, I've been doing a long time, Kylie. I'm surprised you haven't heard.
Well, it's so funny. Once we cross the border and we meet all these dynamic people in real estate, the world just evolves. And I would say, auctioneers in Melbourne, you are definitely blue chip. So I look forward to hearing a little bit more about your journey in not only property, but what that looked like as an auctioneer. Ruth, you're still on the tools listing and selling. You've got a rent roll down where you are. But would you mind taking us back to how did it all start? How did you get into real estate and how long have you been doing it?
Well, it was probably through necessity, Kylie. It was many, many years ago, and I was involved just in family business with my husband at the time, and things were getting very tough in the industry that he was in, and I needed to get work. And I actually thought it would be a great idea for him to get into real estate because he had building knowledge, he had a really good personality, and I just thought that's something that he would just do very well. But he didn't think it was his calling. And the more I thought about it and spoke to people, I just had a couple of people say to me, you should give it a shot. So I went and worked for a local agent, one-man show. And whilst that was really hard, it just gave me a great background. And I think that's really set me up for the future because I was thrown in the deep end and I was doing everything.
Straight into sales, Ruth, or did you go into another role before?
Straight into sales. I used to do the advertising as well. I did a bit of trust accounting because it was a very small office. There was only three of us. And I lived locally too.
And how long before you made the transition into sales did you like, I've got to get my own digs, I've got to buy my own office? What did that journey look like and what was the time period?
Well, I bought the business from the owner that I first started. I worked with him for a number of years. And then he decided he wanted to have a lifestyle change. And so I really bought the rent roll thinking I was just buying myself a job, that I would just take the rent roll, do a few sales here and there. And so the staff, again, there were three of us, and it actually took off.
So many questions. Before we go too deep into the rent roll and your leadership journey, I'd just like to defer to Ben for a second. I think a lot of people have seen your name over the years in the REB Top 100, celebrated as the highest individual sales agent in your 3163 district, I think for the last 12 or 13 years running. Exceptional reputation for producing great results and best in sector client experience. How did you get into the industry?
Well, I was studying law straight out of high school. So I went to uni and just got my score and thought, oh, what does that mean I can study? And so I picked the course that fit the number and then went and lived on campus at uni and never went to uni when I was 100 metres away. That's kind of how my uni journey went, and hated law. Pretty much thought that if the career was going to be anything like the course, that it'd be no good for me. So I sort of I took a bit of a break from it and started working. I worked at Harvey Norman in sales, blogging computers. I moved up to Sydney with a job sort of working at the Bondi store for about 4 months as a bit of a working holiday over summer. And when I came back, I thought, oh, should I go back to uni? What should I do? And I was very, very fortunate because my father is a physio locally here, and lying on his table was Ruth's partner. And so when they got chatting, Dad was pumping my tyres as he tends to do, and said, and Ruth's partner said, I think Ruth might be looking for someone. So that was how the introduction went. And I was, I think 22, 23 at the time. Ruth called me in for a sort of ad hoc type interview, and that was it. Dropped out of law, and that was 15 years ago now.
Pretty big move. And it's actually funny, you're the third agent that I have interviewed over the last couple of months who was studying law, who has made the transition to real estate. I mean,
well, transition's probably, it's a nice way to put it, that's for sure.
It's quite interesting that you leave something that is that disciplined and structured with a pretty clear pathway and come across to real estate. What was it that made you take that jump? What are the sort of things that was going through your mind when you agreed to come into real estate?
Yeah, I think I never probably saw it as a jump because I don't know if I ever thought anything was long term when I was 22. So I don't know if it felt like, oh, this is my next 15-year career. Like I was, it wasn't my first thought at all. I jumped into it because I love sales, and I thought, all right, what's the big time as far as sales? When I was doing very well, I was sort of supplementing my own lifestyle by working very little and studying-ish. And then I probably didn't see it as a massive career move, but the circumstances with Ruth, and again, that's just pure luck, but in the second year of being with Ruth, there was a number of circumstances that all came together with the sales guys that were there at the time. So some of them retired, some of them left, and, some were asked to leave. All these things converged all at once in my second year. So I'd been in the role for maybe 8 months, and then it was just Ruth and I. And Ruth at that stage was listing higher volume than any other combined agency in our area by herself. I think she listed 180 odd properties in 2012, which was
outstanding.
It was ridiculous, really, back then, with what you had to do to list and sell back then on paper contracts and paper authorities and everything else. So it was really just us. So it was sort of thrust into the limelight for me, which was amazing. And from there, we kind of haven't really looked back. It was just pure circumstance. It was very lucky, and I sort of head down then. And then that allowed me to build a name for myself very quickly.
Ruth, obviously we talked about you've had a stellar career, and I want to go into your area first before we dig too deep into your journey, the evolution of the business. And I want to find out what young Ben was like when he first came in and worked for you, and how you manage new talent to industry. I think there might be some stories there. But Ruth, could you just start by telling us where you sort of operate, what the markets look like, and sort of a little bit about your pricing?
Like I said, at that stage when Ben joined me, we were really leaping from where the office was then, was in Glen Huntly. And it was a lot of villa units, surrounded by a lot of villa units. And, I was starting to get into some good houses as well, but the bread and butter were flats and villas. And so when Ben joined me, and he says that a lot of it's luck, but he was a born salesperson, Ben. He very quickly became obvious. He's quite a smart young man. And I have to say that I've learned a lot from Ben over the journey too. So whilst the basis was there between us, that's where I guess the springboard was from there on. And I guess back then the price points were, houses were selling for about, probably under $1 million back then. Villas were around $400,000. But Ben was he was a hard worker. I mean, he talks about saying that he was looking for something a little bit easy, but, he was working Sundays. We used to work Sundays as well to keep up with volume. We'd be doing 6 auctions on a Saturday and another 4 on a Sunday just to fit everything in. So it wasn't that easy or that lucky.
Like, what are we looking at for prices? We get people listening from all over the world and Australia to this podcast. What are we looking at in your marketplace at the moment? What's the sort of property?
Good houses are selling between 2 and 3 mil.
Yes.
Good villas can now bring up to $1 million. Apartments are probably 500-600.
And we started to talk before, Ruth, around you got into the rent roll quite early in your career and it just took off.
Yes.
Could you talk to us about that and talk to us about what do you sort of pay for, what's your median rental in your local area?
Back then when I first bought the rent roll, there were about 200 properties from Pat, who I was working with at the time. And look, the average rent would have been probably then $200, I guess. 1-bedroom flats, 2-bedroom flats. Now we've got a lot of houses, a lot of townhouses. Average rents would probably be around $600-700 a week, I guess, across the board.
And you're operating in more than one location for our listeners?
Yes. So we had the 3 offices, the original office in Glen Huntly. Then Ben and I opened another office on Koonang Road just before COVID. And then we bought the Woodards Bentley office in Centre Road, Bentley, 2 years ago, I guess. It's coming up.
2 years, yeah. Almost.
Yeah. And we've just recently closed the Glen Huntly Road office because we really just didn't need 3 offices. And particularly the Glen Huntly offices, they're old banks, they're quite big buildings.
You've got a fantastic space. So if anyone's ever down in your neck of the woods, I'd encourage them to come in and have a look at your amazing fit outs and the incredible artwork on the side of the office. Talk to us about that, Ben, and how that artwork came about.
We approached the guy who had that. It's just a very cool building, the one in Koonang Road. It kind of looks like the Uphouse. If everyone's seen that movie, it sticks out. It used to be, I think, must have been something to do with the rail line because it sits sort of under the train line, if that makes sense, for a sky rail, and it sits by itself. So it's a very prominent building and everyone knows it. But we just like the building. So we approached him. We used to do a lot of sort of tongue-in-cheek billboard ads and still do really, but that was a perfect location. And when we approached him to say, hey, do you mind if we put a billboard up here? He says, oh, you're about the 10th agent who's tried. And they'll only allow a permit if you're operating an office from here. And we said, well, what's the rent then? And it was pretty reasonable. So we just ended up opening the office, and that was kind of how it started. And then we kind of thought, well, if we're going to put just one billboard, we may as well make the whole office a bit of a billboard. So we wrapped it all in graffiti and billboards either side and tried to be a bit different. Certainly attracts our eyeballs. Everyone knows it now, and it's, operates to our direct competitors. So it's it's been great, to be honest. It's been an awesome little office.
Talking about attracting eyeballs and attracting attention, one of the things that sort of hit me between the eyes when I met you guys was just your constant starvation or appetite for wanting to make the 1%ers better. So obviously, Ruth, you've grown an incredible business. You're now looking at bringing in some new partners and evolving the business. What has kept you striving for excellence, and what have been your biggest lessons learnt, Ruth, in the time that you've had the business as far as continual innovation?
I think the lessons are you've just got to back yourself. And that was a big thing for me because I think, as I said initially, when I first purchased the rent roll, I was really just buying myself a job. I think I just surrounded myself, and again, I probably didn't realise it at the time, with the right sort of people who would back me, people who gave me the confidence that, you can actually do this and take this to another level. And people were happy to support me. I think they saw that I was having a go. So that's what I've always taken, that attitude. I'm not saying I'm a huge risk taker. I do take risks, but just always got to be pushing on. You've just got to be doing something new, different, and just bringing something to the table all the time.
So, Ruth, when you say about your tribe and having people around you support you, was that people in industry or out of industry? Was it local, or was it getting mentors? Or tell us a bit more about that.
Probably in the business to a certain degree. John Piccolo, who has the Woodards brand. That's why I went with Woodards, because I just felt he was going to support me. And there were just some other real estate agents that I knew that just gave me good support. I got a business coach, and my family supported me too, because it was not an easy journey for them having their mother work so many hours and days of the week.
Certainly takes a lot, and it gives a lot, our industry. Yes. And when you say it's important to have the support of your partner and kids at home, what advice, because a lot of people struggle with this in our industry, and this podcast is about leadership and how we be better leaders and what we've learned and advice we'd instill on others to let them know that they're not the Lone Ranger back in their office. What advice would you give to people that are trying to juggle young families, they're trying to keep their marriage alive at home, that you could bestow on us today?
Well, I guess it's the old glass balls, rubber balls, isn't it? And just really trying to prioritise the really important things. I mean, there are some things that you missed out on, but I think also you work really hard. And I think if you've got the right family and you lead by example and you have the right, I guess, attitude, I would say my family, they admire what I've done. They're very proud of what I've achieved.
So on that, the things that you're most proudest of, tell me about your auctioneering journey. Was that a proud moment? How did that happen?
I was thrown into it. Again, Pat, who my first employer, he said to me, you should do auctions. And I thought, well, I need to differentiate myself, because it was a very male-orientated real estate world, nearly 30-odd years ago. And he said, I'll put your name in for the novice auctioneers competition. And that was it. I had to go and do that. And again, there were a couple of other women at the same time, but then their employers didn't give them anything to auction, where I went off and auctioned my first property just that Saturday after the first competition, which I didn't win, but I was the only one that went on to do auctions.
And what did that do for your leadership position in the local community and recruiting agents, do you think, Ruth?
Yes and no. I mean, I don't know. I feel like most of the agents that I've recruited have been organic.
Through relationships or?
Yes, through relationships like the Ben, and then in the office. I think too, the business is very family orientated, and people initially, it's grown now and it's hard to keep that going, but it was family. And I think that then the staff feel the same, and so they would refer their friends, etc., if there was a job going. So there's a connection virtually with everyone in this office. They know someone who works with us, or so I think we try and keep that going. To be honest, again, and I'm talking 30 years ago, a lot of my competitors who I thought were behind me, actually, when I became a competitor, changed things.
How important is it to stay focused and true to you and not watch your competitors, do you think, in leadership?
I just stay in my own lane. I don't worry about what my competitors are doing. I just really stay focused on what I can do and what I can control.
So, Ben, on that, and I've only had the pleasure of meeting Ruth once in the flesh, but something that hit me was her style and her calmness. Obviously, she's been a great mentor for you, and you guys work very, very closely together. How important is the alignment in leadership, and how do you guys keep that going when you're both so busy?
Yeah, well, it was interesting actually because, we, like a lot of businesses, I assume, sort of have the values that you try and keep to. And we didn't, I think 10 years ago, maybe we had a session and trying to work out what those were. When you sort of think about the culture of your office, I think most of it was probably just emanating from Ruth, because obviously a lot of people were, almost everyone here has only had one job, and that's with Ruth. So a lot of the values probably came from her, really. And the first one is calm and in control. So you probably hit the nail on the head there, because that's
funny. I didn't actually know that. So that's quite amazing that was an observation from when I first met Ruth.
And that's really the sort of, I guess, what we try and keep as a common wavelength throughout people we hire and how we deal with business. But it's probably what keeps the culture reasonably aligned. It's very hard. I mean, it's a hard thing to describe. It's a hard thing to keep, I suppose. But everyone in our office really does have, they're very different people, but some sort of similar wavelength. And you know when someone isn't aligned, and that makes leadership easy.
How do you know that, Ben? Like for you, I mean, obviously you're a good salesperson, you've got great relationships and you're watching, but how do you know?
I think it's little things that you notice that just strike you as a bit off. I don't know. We had a fella, this is maybe gone years back, but he used to have these huge headphones, and he'd put them on and he'd walk straight into the office, and he'd walk straight past we had a trust accountant that used to sit in this one spot of the office, and he'd go straight past her on a Monday and sit down and start making calls. And this trust accountant, she was brought up on a farm, loved to chat, and we knew, obviously you don't want to stand there for 20 minutes, but you give 5 minutes because you'll chew your ear off. She wants to hear what happened, and she's just great, great cultural person. Now he's massive headphones on, walk straight past her. And it just was one of those things where you go, that's probably not what I would have done. And little things like that strike me as, maybe you're not the same as me. Maybe you don't think the way I do.
Emotional intelligence, I think.
Yeah. And that's
just
it.
being a bit of aware of their surroundings, right?
There's little things like that, but those little things you see all the time. And again, of course, everyone's different, but the common wavelength of, whether it is respect, whether it's how you treat people, whether it is attitude, whether it is, being calm and in control when we like to run at high volume. We like everyone operating at pace and working on more listings than having a lot of people working on less. We have a lot of ideals that we like to work towards as a business, but if you can remain calm and in control throughout how we like to operate, then you're probably operating similar to me.
So, Ben, the little things are the big things in leadership. You've come in red hot in your early 20s, being a high-performing sales agent, had to evolve to be a leader and come into business ownership. There are a lot of people listening to this podcast that are right where you were back then. How do you help them, and what advice would you give them?
If you're going to do it, do it. So, if you want to be a leader, you've got to really enjoy other people's lives and hearing about them and being involved in them and the good stuff and the bad stuff. I think you got to like all the stuff. You got to like talking to people about their kids and their problems and everything. If that is you and you enjoy it and you enjoy giving yourself as well and being vulnerable yourself and what's going on in your own life, I would say everyone in my sales team probably knows too much about my life, realistically. Like, I'm just a sharer. That's been natural for me definitely since kids, but it's that vulnerability that I think helps humanize you with your team, but also understand what the team's doing, what they're going through, all of those things, and helps you be a real person and a real leader. Now, if you don't like doing that, and a lot of people don't who are salespeople, just get someone who can.
I think it's knowing what you are and knowing what you are not, and what you want to do and what you don't want to do. How do you set expectations and drive performance in leadership as a high-performing sales agent?
I've found that very difficult because we are evolving from a business that traditionally was very, very top heavy as far as income. So we generated most of the income between two of us. That's definitely evolved over the last probably 5 years to a point now where we're much bigger and it's a much more even spread, which is a lot more relaxing when you wake up on 1st of January and realize you don't have to generate all of the income to keep everyone working and earning. But that's our biggest sort of area for growth, is more accountability, because it really has just been working to the same pace as Ben and Ruth work, and now Claire. And if you can do that, then you are going to do very well. And then I think most of it has come from cultural alignment with the people that we've chosen, and that they all have that same discipline and, I guess, ownership over their own accountability. But for the ones that aren't, now that we're getting bigger, much harder, because I always found it hard to understand why people wouldn't want to be treated the same way I would. They want to be treated the way they want to be treated, which is very, very different, and that they wouldn't operate the same way I would.
How hard have you had to work at that?
Very, and constantly. Ruth would say the same thing, I'm sure, is that we don't need a lot of pats on the back. We don't need a lot of love, a lot of appreciation, because it's in the numbers, and we do what we do. Claire, I think it's the exact same mold, but there are plenty in our team who aren't at that mold.
Absolutely. And I think it's sort of the rent roll too, right, Ben? Like, Ruth, you've been very, very heavily involved in the rent roll there and building that out. Different psyche a lot of the time, the team members that are in property management. Let's talk about that for a second. How have you had to lead them differently, and how have you had to build on your leadership over the time, Ruth?
Look, it's been interesting, I guess. And to be honest, I haven't always had to be so involved. My daughter ran the property management division for a number of years, and she now is doing other things. So that was a big challenge for me. I don't have a lot of property management experience. I've never actually worked in it. I've just helped oversee it with a department head. But I think as Ben said, Ben and I don't think either of us we don't have big egos, and we both. And that's something that I think and Ben and I've talked about it, I let myself down a little bit with some of the team because of the way I operate. I assume everyone's happy. You just, you have your wins, you have your losses, but you just get on with doing your job. And I now realise that people need and want more than that, we're not all the same. So, look, I spend most of my time with property management just chatting, just like they're all great people. And I think sometimes I just want to share the ups and downs with me as well. It's not an easy job being a property manager. It's getting harder and harder. So I really just lend an ear.
So it's that connection and being present. Do you think, Ruth, has been the most important thing for you?
Yeah. And I want to hear, I do want to know what's going on in their lives. I can't really give them much advice, from property management. They know more than me. They're all very well experienced. But I've realised that they just like to have a chat, just like I do.
And Ben and Ruth, a constant juggle, right? Particularly if you're still selling principals, between leading the business, recruiting, growing market share, deciding what community events to put on marketing, particularly when you're, in a bit of a change pattern like you are, and also wanting to still grow your people and grow the business. Walk us through that, Ben and Ruth. You work pretty hard and you wear a lot of hats. Is that going to change?
I don't think so. It's probably not in the short term. I think bringing more people into the business may level it out a bit.
And is that in doing or in sales, Ben, or both?
In both, yeah. I think in both. We've been very fortunate that we're very, very lean, and we've been able to be incredibly lean from an administrative perspective because of the experience we have in those departments. So, less people can do more, but we've grown to a point now where that's probably stretched. As if we want to take on more initiatives and more projects and those kind of things, we're probably stretched. It's obviously incredibly nice to be lean when you go through turbulent markets and ups and downs, but we've probably hit a point now where we've grown to a point where we need even more support. So I think in doing that, it will be good because it will mean that there'll be some roles that can be taken off me, perhaps.
Ben, do you think that's because the demand of the customer being internally your team and externally, vendor buyer, there's an expectation now that you've got to specialise in, you look at digital and what you've got to do with respect to marketing and community and the client experience. Do you think that's driven the extra resourcing that you have to consider as a leader?
I think it has, and I think it is also driven from us because we don't want to be middle pack. And we were fortunate that all you had to do to be the best 10 years ago, let's say, is be the best list and seller. And if you had two of those, you were probably the best in your marketplace. And now the amalgamation of different businesses, the size and scale of these sales businesses now, that's not kind of good enough. The movement of sales agents as well is that what you offer isn't just, a desk and a phone and the phone book. It's now the expectation of leads, the expectation of training, the expectation of where is this business going and where do I sit? All of those things now, again, if you want to be great, then I think you have to consider being great at those things as well. And I think the more hard work that you do in that space, the easier and more automated it can become later. So yes, it's a hell of a lot of work to plan out induction and your first 100 days of real estate and all that stuff. Like it's very tiresome, but when you've done it, you've done it. So that's what we're all working through, as you know. The expectation, I think, yes, from clients externally, but certainly the expectation from internal staff is bigger if you want good ones.
And surely if people are more after, the pathway, learning and development, accountability, coaching, great induction, onboarding, the list goes on, is how important is that feedback loop or making time with team as a leader to give and receive feedback?
I think so. And it depends on the personality, on the structure of that. So some of our team would love structured time, a coffee, a breakfast or whatever, or a daily phone call just to make sure it's all on track or whatever it is. Like, and some need constant touch, and then some would definitely not like that and just come to me if you've got something good for me and you can help me, rather than, constantly making sure everything's okay. Like, obviously deal support, we're big on. We're still not a big enough team that we're all in silos. We all still are across almost every deal really. And so, we'll still jump on the grenade for you when we need to or whatever. But yeah, I think it's awesome, of course. I don't think there's a one size fits all approach to that.
It's interesting though, isn't it, when you talk about some people will need nurturing and that deal support and knowing as a leader when you're growing your business what you can and can't accommodate. And like you said earlier, is finding either someone that can do those things if you can't, or just accept and communicate what you can. Ruth, do you think we're good at that? And have you seen that change much in leadership over the years?
Look, leadership has changed. There's no doubt about that. I think people are looking for more leadership. They expect more from their leaders. And I think, we're undergoing a change in this office now, I think, with the leadership and moving forward. Ben's, as you're aware, putting a lot more structure into the business. And I think this is where we're now going to go to at the next level, which Ben is very well suited to do that. And I think the leadership, he's becoming a very strong leader. And just going back to leadership, I think it's all about, I think Ben's won the respect of his co-workers, but also in the real estate arena, because I think sometimes people are very quick to knock someone and everyone wants to knock down someone that looks like they're going to do well. But I think even his competitors, there's probably a respect there because he's certainly proven himself. And then I think that flows into the office. And I think leadership now, yes, you've seen to be, people want to know that they're well led. And I think they want to know that they can trust their leader and they can go to their leader with any questions and looking for advice about anything in life generally. I mean, I'd like to think anyone could come to either of us and talk to them about any issues they might be having. But that's where I just think leadership now is very, very important. People want it. I think most of us need it.
They crave for it, right?
Yeah.
And I think that too, that competency, Ben, that you've had in salesmanship has definitely helped with that respect that you've earned not only in your team but within industry. So you've got, the brownie points and the street cred.
I think it's still a bit old school in that respect. Like you still, like the points on the board still matter. You can tell that, any salesperson sees someone have a great month and all of a sudden they want to know another tip. It's the same. It's still, there is still a respect that gets gained by writing a big number. There's not.
It certainly helps, doesn't it? I think
it does. Yeah,
it certainly helps. I mean, I've had sales managers in the past that I've put on from outside of sector, and they've even been given a hard time. You haven't sat in lounge rooms, you don't know what it's like, and there's probably one or two people that come to mind that have never sat in a lounge room and some of the best leaders I've ever met. But I definitely think it helps in the real estate arena. But that being approachable, being present, being relatable, and the vulnerability that you mentioned earlier is such a huge thing in leadership. Is it a struggle between being too vulnerable, so you still are courageous and people want to follow you? Ruth, I'm a glass half full kind of gal, so I don't like to focus on negative things, but I'm always curious because I think sometimes we get the best learnings from mistakes made or from the greatest adversity. Have you ever had a leadership fail that you've learned from and that you'd be vulnerable enough to share with us?
I have, and put them behind you. But I guess most of mine, and I've had a couple, I guess, would be around in employment, people that I've taken on board. Not so much the people that I've taken on board, but when it's become obvious that this is no longer the right job for them. And I've let it go on to their detriment as well as my own.
It's actually probably a really good point, is to their detriment as well as yours, because sometimes I think it's interesting because good sales agents that are principals are often really good at leading into difficult conversations with vendor around pricing or feedback, but we often avoid it or deflect on it, difficult conversations in our organisation. Have you ever done that, or you've been pretty good at going straight for it?
Look, now I don't. I think earlier when you were talking with Ben, we touched on about with staffing, etc. And how do you know? I mean, you just get a gut feel immediately when things, when things just don't seem right. And I now know biding time, trying to make allowances doesn't work. You know when it's wrong. And I think from past mistakes, I've just hoped that things improve for them. And they haven't. And I wonder if I'd stepped in earlier and done something more about it, more for them. I mean, one could have been a big problem for me, but I wish I'd stepped in a bit earlier because I might have saved him some embarrassment and helped him.
And help them navigate through it and retain them, is that what you mean?
No, it would never have worked to retain them, but they should have probably sought some help.
Just help them out as a human being.
Rather than it becoming to a point where there was no option. I had no choice. And it was a shame that it got to that, really. And I could see it just
getting worse and worse.
Yeah, little things, and then it became more things, and then I'd be giving him the benefit of the doubt, and then, when it happened, it was like, oh, surprise, surprise.
It's interesting, isn't it? As good salespeople, our intuition doesn't let us down very often, and the first time we think it is usually the first time we should probably act on it, and I think that's great advice. We haven't talked much about your auctioneering journey other than when you went into the novice auctioneers competition. Have you called many auctions over the time, or was it to become more of a specialist in that area when managing auction campaigns?
Well, I was the only auctioneer in the office for many years, so I did every auction. And now Ben does auctions, and a couple of the young guys do auctions. So I'm probably not doing as many, but I've done a lot of auctions, and I did the first auction on the block in Melbourne.
Did you? I did not know that. Tell us about that.
That was amazing, and it was a great thing. And when we talked earlier about just bringing new things into the business and always having something on the go, that was something that created a lot of good feeling and a good vibe for the office when our office was the agents for, the first block episode in Melbourne. And we had a lot of fun and the whole office joined in. And it was a big event, and it was back then in the day when the auction was, shrouded in secrecy. No one knew where it was, and only the contestants and a few family and friends could attend the auction. And then it was televised the following day. So a lot of people said, why would you do that? Because you just put yourself up for ridicule, really, with social media and what have you. But again, I just thought, I'm going to get out of my comfort zone and just do something and do it for the business. And it was a lot of fun, and we really enjoyed it.
You're the second person I've spoken to within the space of 10 minutes that's talked about the power of getting out of your comfort zone and getting into the fear zone to get to the change zone, to become a better version of yourself or to get a different outcome. What would you say to leaders around that?
Absolutely. I think back to two major incidents when I was first setting out, and I just bought the business, and I was actually doing my license as I took over the business. And I had made an appointment, and I thought the appointment was at 1:00, and I'd driven all the way back an hour's drive from where I was doing my license because I was doing an accelerated one. And I went to the house and they said, look, your appointment was an hour ago. And I died, and I left. I went back to the office and I said, look, I can't believe it. I've driven it all the way. And then I had a look and saw that they'd actually made the mistake. So I just fronted up there again and I said, look, I know you think I was an hour late, but I'm here and I need to present. This is where I've come from and what I've done to get here. And I did it and listed it. But another one was every night I would be driving home and I would see agents' cars at the same house over a period of a week. And my office was literally in their backyard. So I just went and knocked on the door the next night and I just said, why haven't you called me in? And they said, we don't know. And I said, well, can I? And they said, of course you can. And I listed it. And from that moment, I don't think I looked back.
Don't ask, you won't get. But I think sometimes we tell ourselves so many stories. Oh, I won't do that. Or they've already got a relationship. Or they didn't call me in. They don't like me. But backing yourself as a leader and just going for it sometimes is so incredibly important. That is a defining moment as a sales agent. Tell me about a defining moment in leadership for you.
Well, I think that one moment, because it was when there were only three of us in the office at this stage, and one of the, he was the property manager. He said to me, go around there, do it. And I did. And when I came back, it just lifted all of us because it was such a joint effort, because I was embarrassed to go back around there, but they pushed me. And so we really celebrated that together. And I think they then looked at me as a leader because I did something that I certainly wouldn't have done normally. So I think it's when you have hard conversations, when you lead by example. I think that's where leadership becomes really important.
Ruth, I am so glad that you said that moment then, because I thought you might have got away from it and I thought, oh God, this will go pear-shaped if she doesn't say, well, that was an example of a defining moment, because it was natural to you. So it was authentic. And like you say, it was a joint effort because your team were encouraging you, but you did lead by example. And I don't think there could be anything greater from a leadership trait than those attributes. So absolutely incredible. So Ruth, I'm mindful and respectful of how long I've had you. I'd love to talk to you in another series around your career because it's been outstanding. But I'd just like to ask you one question to finish today on leadership. What are the non-negotiables of leadership for you?
Loyalty.
Have my back and I'll have yours. And you mentioned earlier about surrounding yourself with good people. Would they be your two?
I would say I'm a very loyal person and I expect that from other people. And I don't mean loyal that you have to work for me for the rest of your life. Something I don't do, I never rehire anyone. And it's not because they've left and they want to come back and I think they're being disloyal. I don't think it sends a good message to the rest of your staff. And I value the loyalty and I think it works both ways.
Okay, so we're going to sign off from Ruth. Loyalty trust and your tribe, but having those clear expectations. And I love the fact that, you do you, that you said, I would never rehire somebody again. That's really interesting. I've never had anybody say that before, but I completely respect it and I completely hear where it's coming from. If you had to tap a younger version of yourself on the shoulder, any advice?
Believe in yourself. Get out of your comfort zone. And I think just surround yourself with the right sort of people. People that support you, people that don't try and drag you down.
Ben, any leadership do-overs?
Yeah, I think most of the mistakes that I think I've made leadership-wise is on expectation and probably like career path expectation and people moving too quickly to, whether that's going out on their own as an individual agent, whether that's building an EBU quickly themselves, whatever the case may be, is just jumping into it either too quickly or without the right expectation in mind. And that find it very hard if you hire the right people who are ambitious and those people are bull at a gate, they want to get to the top of the mountain. Those people are unbelievable to hire, especially if they're culturally aligned. But if the expectation isn't managed from a leadership perspective, once they get there, if it's not what they thought, or if they're not progressing as fast as they want to in their own minds, it's very hard for them to take a step back. So if you see someone who's unbelievable within an EBU and says, I want to go out on my own, I'm an ambitious person, and they do that and it doesn't quite work out in the first 6 months, let's say, and maybe they're going to be an amazing agent, but they cannot possibly step back to being back into an EBU, or because of their own ego and their own ambition, that's where you lose them, I think. So that's what I'm trying to get better at, is the framework of expectation and ability to be able to progress people.
I love that. It's great advice.
That's where I've found is the cracks. Is people don't like going backwards. So if you're going to progress forward, it needs to be at the time where it's they're going to get what they thought.
And what's been your biggest joy or proudest moment as a leader?
It's a good question. I think a lot of the team now has probably progressed under me, if that makes sense. So a lot of them are in my vein, which probably makes it easier from a leadership perspective because it's not like I've adopted them. A lot of them started very green. So seeing them, so many of them out on their own, generating their own incomes, having their own families and being able to afford all of those kind of things it brings me a lot of joy. I think whenever I can, just little moments, whenever I can value add, whenever I can, say something to a good salesperson and then go, I didn't know that. Just those lots of little moments, and then I hear them use it at an appraisal, or I hear them win a listing and those kind of things. That's, I get a kick out of that.
Well, it's pretty cool because you are changing lives. And the second one is, I have had an impact.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes we don't do enough to celebrate our wins as leaders and reflect on the journey and pat ourselves on the back. So I love that one. Now, if you could go back, and I feel so silly asking you this because you are still so youthful. If you could go back and tap a younger version of yourself on the shoulder and give them some advice about the industry and or leadership, what would it be?
Luckily, I think I got a lot right. I don't think I'd change a lot about what I did. I was very lucky. I was pretty clever of me when it became just Ruth and I very early on, and Ruth sort of said, we're going to need to hire a lot more people. I turned to her and sort of did my figures as a 23-year-old and said, well, why don't I hire them and I'll pay them, and then you just it'll just be you and I and a little EBU, but I'll handle the stuff. You just keep listing stuff. And so she said, all right, well, let's see if that works. And it was quite financially beneficial to me, but I was basically running a little team from at the start. So I would definitely do that again because it gave me leadership very quickly. I'd been in the industry for a year, I think, when I had
But
PAs
that would have given you an opportunity to understand profit though, right? And the levers and things. So I think, that's a gift for younger people, is get on top of your numbers quicker, whether it be your key drivers or metrics or understanding profit, because you and I have had this conversation, days into weeks, weeks into months, months into years, like that, if you don't watch your numbers.
That's right. And I think from an agent perspective, because I think if you can grow as a writer, everything else can, listings solve a lot of problems. If you can be a good writer in your own right and you don't have to rely on anyone else necessarily, that is a very comfortable platform to grow a business from. And if you know that if everything turns to custard and every one of your salespeople leave you and start their own business and whatever, that you can still write your own numbers. I think that's a safe base to then grow from, because you know that you can do it. So that's why I like being on the tools, because there's a safety in it as well.
Will that change for you, Ben? So competitors, if you're listening to this, he's not going off sales tomorrow, right? But in the future, can you see a space where you're not listing and selling and you're just building the rent roll, building the salespeople that you've got within the team? Is that something that would interest you?
I think so. Once you've got enough runs on the board that you have, that you can do that. I think I'd love to. Yeah, I'd love to transition at some point in my life into where I do that. But I think I'd just like doing deals though.
Yeah, you still got it. Like it's still so.
I love the thrill of the chase. I still get a kick out of listing, still get a kick out of putting a deal together, and that's. I don't think that's going to change any time soon. So if I can still be involved in deal support and that kind of thing and closing, then yeah. But I do love that stuff.
What are you listening to or reading at the moment to help you on your leadership journey?
That's a good question. My 4-month-old screaming at me most of the time, and my 4-year-old telling me what to do, and my nearly 40-year-old telling me what to do.
Parenthood will teach you more about leadership than you'll ever get at work.
Yeah, so I don't know if I specifically, I'll listen to podcasts, I'll read the odd thing, but nothing that I'm dedicated to be perfectly honest.
Real life at the moment, Ben?
Yeah. Yep. There's a lot of real life going on.
Yeah. And just to finish with, and thank you so much, you and Ruth have been so incredibly generous with your time. Is there a favourite quote or a non-negotiable that Ben Dax lives his life by in leadership?
Yeah, I think calm and in control is it, honestly. I like to try and live my life that way too, like home life and work life. I'd like to think that if I could, hope to be the best possible trait in myself would be that I'm very calm when things are very hard. That's what I hope I can handle when there's real pressure. That's when people can turn to me as a calming influence and that I can handle it. That would be my goal.
That's pretty good. It creates safety and builds trust. So I would say that's a pretty good place to finish on. Calmness, safety and trust. Ben and Ruth, we can't wait to hear more about your journey and what's happening down there. And thank you so much for being so generous with your time today.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of Impact and Influence. Click follow to get notified about future episodes. Leaving a review helps others find the podcast. And to learn more about our courses, our study tours, conferences, keynote topics and our services, or how simply we might be able to help support you in taking you to places you never thought possible, please visit regrowthkyliewalsh.com. Impact and Influence, brought to you by Regrowth Consultancy, powered by Flick It Over. Flick It Over is a leading electronic software platform. Flick It Over provides industry-specific solutions to improve process, client experience and efficiencies. Make your document delivery and workflow seamless with Flick It Over.